Justin stared at the young child in his arms. It seemed like he was calling out for his mother. Pete rarely asked about his mother. Justin had thought he wasn't curious about her. But as it turns out, he'd been mistaken. She must be very important to him if he was talking about her in his sleep. He felt a mixture of complex emotions arising. He carried Cherry into the bedroom, took off her shoes, and tucked her in. He gazed at the child's young, sleeping face for a long time before he quietly left the room. "Sorry I fell asleep last night. Did Daddy scold you, Cherry?" Cherry lay on the bed and read the text that had woken her. She sent her brother a voice message back. "Nope, because even though I don't know much about math, I'm awesome at history. Daddy was so impressed that he cancelled the rest of the week." Pete believed her. He said, "Okay, don't forget our plans today." Cherry was just about to reply when the door opened. Justin walked in to see the child he thought was his son on the bed, phone in hand, jabbering away. At the sight of him, the child turned off the cell phone screen in a slight panic. Then, with a guilty conscience, blinked his big adorable eyes and exclaimed, "You look even more handsome today, Daddy." Justin couldn't help but smile when he heard the compliment. "You're a handsome fellow too." "No, that won't do," Cherry corrected him seriously and said, "Handsome is used to describe boys. I'm going to be pretty when I grow up." She'd forgotten he thought she was Pete. Justin was perplexed. Cherry flipped the quilt aside and climbed out of the bed nimbly. Then she held his large hand with her own small one and asked, "Want to have breakfast, Daddy? Cherry Pitt is really hungry." Justin glanced at his son hesitantly again as they headed through to the dining room. While they were eating, Justin instructed Lawrence, "Get the family doctor here." Cherry ate slowly, so Justin got the nanny to look after her after he'd finished. He went into the study with the family doctor who had hurried over. The doctor stood there, watching his employer's expression changing again and again, before hesitantly asked, "Is it possible to tell a 5-year-old child's sexual orientation?" During the history quiz the day before, all the names that his son had mentioned were good-looking, attractive men. Moreover, his son's wish to become pretty and how he'd called himself Cherry Pit this morning seemed a little unusual. When the family doctor saw how serious he was, he replied solemnly, "Sexual orientation is often difficult to determine at such a young age. But if you have concerns about this, I can prepare a test for Pete." "Yes, get the test ready." Justin said goodbye to the doctor and returned to the dining room. To make it up to his son for what had happened with the tutors, he'd already postponed all his work and meetings today. Since Pete wanted to go to the movies, he would take him. They picked an afternoon screening of a kids' film. Before leaving, Cherry secretly sent a message to Pete. "All set, Pete. What about you?" Pete replied very quickly, "We've already set off." As she had to perform surgery the next day, Nora had slept all the way to 2 p.m. She was still feeling tired when she took Pete to the movie theatre. At the entrance, she looked at Pete and smiled to herself. "It's just a movie, Cherry. Is this really necessary?" Pete had a mask on. "Yes, it's to prevent being infected by contagious diseases." Nora put a hand to her forehead. "And the shades?" Pete pushed them up a little and replied reticently, "They look good." "If you say so." After Nora bought them some popcorn and soda, she took Pete's hand and led him to the movie theatre. Once they had taken their seats, Pete took out his cell phone and sent a text to his sister. "Are you here yet?" Right at that moment, Cherry was sulkily following Justin into the theatre. She'd wanted popcorn, but her father had adamantly refused to buy her any, saying that it was unhealthy. She'd decided he was horrible. Justin intensely disliked large movie theatres like this. There were too many people, and the air felt dirty. But because his son wanted the experience, it wouldn't have been quite appropriate for him to book the whole theatre either. They reached the seats on the tickets that his son had brought online. Justin's heart sank as he spotted the woman already seated next to them. The theatre was dark, but she was so attractive he'd recognize her anywhere. She seemed very sleepy, and her eyes were almost closed. Her arms were comfortably crossed, and she didn't notice their arrival. Justin's expression darkened. He'd been wondering why his son had suddenly wanted to come to the movies, and had even booked the tickets himself. It must have been part of her plan all along. She was so cunning and rude, sitting there ignoring them, virtually asleep. He wanted to turn around and leave, but the thought of his son's mental health suppressed his impatience, and he sat down, letting Pete go next to her. I'm never giving her a chance to get too close to me again. The twins, who both had masks on, exchanged a look. How were Mummy and Daddy going to fall in love if they didn't sit together? The movie started at this point, the theme song echoing round the theatre. It instantly grabbed Cherry's attention, and she started to watch it wide-eyed. Half an hour later, Cherry smelled the popcorn. Engrossed in the movie, she subconsciously nudged Nora and said, "Popcorn, Mummy." Nora, who was dozing off, picked up a piece of popcorn, took off Cherry's mask, and stuffed it into her mouth. Pete was aghast. His sister was going to give them away.
Will Cherry manage to keep her true identity hidden from Justin throughout the movie? Can Pete come up with a plan fast enough to prevent their secret from being exposed? Will Justin and Nora recognize the connection between the twins before the end of the movie? To find out, download the Pocket FM app now. Link in the description. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more gripping stories.